Welcome back. This is part 3 of our Egg-Travaganza. If you're just joining us, we are doing all different recipes featuring eggs because I bought a 60-pack of eggs from Costco because I'm just trying to work more protein into my diet. And in parts 1 and 2, we did a breakfast, an egg bake. We did a lunch, which we did an egg salad. So today in part 3, we're doing a carbonara, and in this dish, the eggs are really the centerpiece because although there are only a couple of eggs in this dish, they really make up the backbone of what gives the carbonara its typical creamy flavor because there's no cream in this recipe. It's just really the egg yolks and the eggs that give it that nice creamy flavor that you're accustomed to for carbonara. And so if you're looking for the recipe, as always, those are linked down below. And if you want to see part 1 or 2, those are also linked in the description box below. But the first step of this recipe is to get the water boiling. So I'm going to go ahead and get that started. This recipe, it's a little bit different than a traditional carbonara because we're going to be using both bacon and chicken. For a carbonara, actually you don't even use bacon at all. There's a different type of meat that's very similar to bacon. I think it's guanciale. I don't really know, but we only have bacon, and ideally for the bacon, you'd buy it in a thick slab and then cut it up. But for this, we just have this bacon, so we're going to go ahead and use it. But yeah, like I was saying, for this recipe, we're doing both chicken and bacon. I decided to add some chicken just to give it a little bit more protein. And so the recipe calls for cooking both the bacon and the chicken on the stovetop. But my preference for both bacon and chicken is to cook it in the oven. I feel like it's just so much easier than having to manage space in a pan or like getting one side burnt. I feel like especially with cooking chicken breasts on the stovetop, you always somehow get the outside too dark and the inside's never cooked through, especially when the chicken's thicker. And like, yes, you can make it thinner and all that stuff, but I just find it's easier just to throw it on a pan in the oven, and then it just cooks evenly, cooks really well, doesn't get too dried out. That's just my personal preference. So that's what we're going to do for this recipe as well. So I'm just going ahead and getting the bacon and the chicken all situated on the baking pans. And then once I have all that done, we'll just pop them both in the oven. You can cook them both at 400 degrees. They will cook for slightly different times, but that's okay because you can pop them both in the oven together. The other thing is once I do the chicken in the oven, I do always temp it just to make sure that it is cooked through. So this recipe only calls for 4 ounces of bacon, but I'm just going to go ahead and cook all of this because then I'll just have leftover bacon. I can eat it, or my family can eat it for breakfasts if they want, instead of just having a couple random bacon left over, and then we'll just add it. Or we could add it all to the carbonara and have an extra bacony carbonara. So I'm going to see if I can squeeze these on here. Okay, so unfortunately, I could not successfully get all the bacon on the pan. I'll just have to cook that in a second round. So the next thing I'm prepping is I'm just getting our chicken on its baking sheet. So the recipe calls for 1.5 pounds of chicken. So I usually buy my chicken at Costco, and so it comes in these bags, which about 1 to 2 pounds. It varies somewhat, but the nice thing is I can just pop it out of the freezer. It doesn't have to be exact, nothing like that. But I'm just going to go ahead and drain this. Probably in an ideal world, I would drain it, pat it dry. But I'm just going to go ahead and throw this on the cooking sheet. Okay, and then I'm just going to go ahead and pop these in the oven. So I just checked the water and it looks like it's almost boiling. I realized before that I forgot to salt the water, so I'm adding a tablespoon of salt to it, and it's still not quite boiling, but it's almost there. Hi, are you helping? Are you helping? So I just checked and it looks like the water is boiling and it's all set. So I'm going to go ahead and add our pasta to the water. We're using a spaghetti and we're using the full 16 ounces. Are you helping? Unfortunately, none of this will be for you. So while the pasta is boiling and the chicken and the bacon are cooking, we're going to go ahead and make what will essentially amount to the sauce for our pasta. And so that's where our eggs come in. So we're going to need 3 whole eggs, and 2 egg yolks. And I'm going to save the egg whites because we are actually going to be using those for another of our egg recipes that's upcoming. Specifically, we're going to be making an angel food cake, which requires a lot of egg whites. So, in an effort in trying not to waste these, I'm going to go ahead and save those. Egg yolk 1, and then egg yolk 2. And egg yolk 2. And these egg yolks are really what give it its creaminess. Okay, so we have our eggs in our bowl. So the next thing we're going to add is our Parmesan cheese. So Parmesan cheese is another modification that made for this recipe. I believe in a traditional carbonara, you use Pecorino Romano cheese, but that's really expensive. So just going to use some Parmesan, which would be pretty good as well. After the Parmesan, we add half a teaspoon of pepper, 1 teaspoon of salt, and then we just combine these. All right, and those are all mixed together. That's perfect timing because I think our chicken and our bacon and our pasta are coming close to being done. So I just tasted my pasta since it's getting pretty close to being done. It's still a little al dente, so still needs a minute or two. But this recipe calls for frozen peas. So what I like to do, I can do this a couple ways. Instead of putting in the microwave, I just like when my pasta's done, I like to throw them in because they cook so fast and it just makes it easy. And one of the other things that I like about using the Dutch oven for things like this, you definitely don't have to, but one of the things I like is because it's so thick, it maintains its heat really well. So when I dump a whole bag of frozen peas in the pasta water, it comes back up to temperature a lot more quickly. While I leave that pasta just sit for a minute or two, the bacon and the chicken I think are getting pretty close to done, if not done. So I'm going to pull those out. Fuji, honey, can you move please? Beep, 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 beep. Thank you. All right, so I just pulled the chicken and the bacon out. I temped the chicken. It was well over the needed temperature. I believe you need to cook it to 165. Ours was over 180. So we're definitely good to go on the chicken. The bacon also looks like a good amount of crispiness as well. So all set there. Since my pasta is now cooked for another minute or two, it should be all set and ready to be drained. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so now that I've drained my pasta, I'm just going to go ahead and add that egg, Parmesan, salt and pepper mixture, and then just mix this all together. Of this recipe are just to cut this chicken up into bite-sized pieces, to add it to the dish, and then also cut up the bacon and add that as well. All right, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of salt. Then just go ahead and add this. I'm going to grab my bacon and do the same. All right. I'm going to cut this up into, or attempt to cut this up into sort of strips. I didn't want to get it too crunchy or as crunchy as I normally would like to eat bacon at if I was just eating it by itself. So it still is a little chewy and a little crunchy, kind of in between. You want bacon, Fuji? That's a good sit. But you don't get to eat bacon. All right, I'm going to go ahead and add this. All right, so everything is all mixed together. The one thing I will say about baking the chicken is it does kind of look like just a very bland chicken. It doesn't get any of the color that you normally have on it in the skillet, but that's okay. I just find it so much easier and faster just to process things that way. And I still think it tastes good. So I'm going to go ahead and just give this recipe a quick try, see if it needs any added salt or anything. Pretty good. Not as good as when I had it in Italy. I think it probably needs just a tad bit more salt, but overall, pretty tasty. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed part 3 of Egg-Travaganza. Up next, we will be doing desserts. So we'll be doing a custard and an angel food cake. So I hope you join us for those. Thanks.
Fuji. Fuji.